We're all searching for it, or people. The ones you can call when you're at the end of your rope. The ones you ask for advice in a difficult stage or deciding on which jeans to buy. The ones who you share dreams and hopes with, who get you to the gym and love your kids like their own. Motherhood was never meant to be a solitary role, and now it doesn't need to be. Here we discuss everything from our favorite kidisms to mental wellness to our best mom hacks and more. Mamas are world changers, and it's time to stop bearing that responsibility alone. So whether you're driving carpool, rocking a sleeping baby, or doing dishes, we're here for you. Welcome to the Village. Welcome to episode 4 of The Village. Today I have a special guest. She's my best friend and kind of the inspiration behind the podcast. So this is Sam Stoneley. Sam, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive into what we're going to talk about?
Yes. First off, hi everybody. How exciting. I'm so excited to be here. We have so many fun things to talk about. Like Missy said, my name is Sam. I am married, similar to Missy, to my high school sweetheart. We've been married just over 6 years. I have 3 beautiful children, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old, which is its own adventure. Went to college. I'm doing absolutely nothing related to what I did in college, but motherhood was what I wanted to do, and just grateful to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so today we wanted to talk about friendships, particularly friendships and motherhood. And this was kind of based off a Marco Polo conversation we had.
We live on Marco Polo.
It's true. We do everything on Marco Polo. But we ended up having this whole discussion one day about friendship and motherhood and kind of how we became friends and how, I mean, sounds dramatic, but life-changing.
Yeah.
It really was. So I feel like you actually remember kind of how we became friends better than I do.
Well, it's because it was such a pivotal moment. Like you said, as dramatic as it sounds, it was pretty life-changing. I remember, the first thing I remember, and these might be a little out of order, so you can correct me here, but the first thing I remember is I moved in with my parents in 2020. My husband was starting his junior core for accounting and was getting ready to go into his master's program, and so we moved in with my parents for some extra help, and that was so lonely. You'd think being surrounded by people all the time, it wouldn't be lonely.
Did
but
you have
it was.
1 or 2 kids at that point?
I had just had my second baby.
Okay.
And was like, you know what, maybe I'll do a play group and see if there's anybody in the neighborhood. So I put it out on Instagram and just said, hey, would anybody be interested in a play group? And I got some responses, and one of them was yours. But then you were like, well, if like play group doesn't work out, maybe we should just go on walks together, because you had just moved in with your parents just down the road from me.
Yeah. So we knew each other in elementary school. Well, I knew your twin sister more than I knew you. I knew you more by extension.
Yeah. But we were friends on social media,
yeah,
just because I think of just connections between our other friends and stuff. I followed along with what was going on in your life and vice versa. And so you responded and were like, if that doesn't work, like, let's just go on walks, which I think is where it started, because
I had just moved in
after.
with my parents for a few months while we renovated our house, and our parents only live like 3 blocks from each other.
Yeah, not far.
So super close.
And we both needed some saving grace, as much as we loved living in our parents' basement. And so it just kind of started with walks. And I'm sure those first, I don't remember it much, but those first few walks, I'm sure our conversation was very surface level and just kind of like,
just
how's life
after 15, 20 years of not really seeing each other.
I think Miles was like 7 or 8 months old.
Yeah, because
Cammie, I think, was only like 3 or 4 months old. And that kind of became a saving grace, was all those walks that we would go on. And it just kind of like developed from there. And then we started doing things not on walks, and things just kind of developed from there. But at the time, you were just starting to get your coaching business off the ground.
I was right at the same time.
And so it was a coaching call that you had that I remember.
Oh my goodness,
do you remember this?
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was after a coaching call. You were texting me and said, hey, I just got off this like coaching to coach, right? As you were building your coaching business call, and we were talking about friendships and relationships, I think was actually in general. Mm-hmm. And so you asked me like, what do you want out of a friendship? Like, what's important to you? And I think that question and that vulnerability right there is honestly what got our friendship off the ground.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I then responded and said, well, if we're going to go down this road, I'm going to blow it all up and here you go. I wanted someone that gave as much as they took.
Yeah.
Because we've all been in friendships where we feel like we are constantly giving and giving and giving and you're never receiving in return. And then those friendships dwindle.
Yeah.
They're not
because you don't have the
worth
capacity
your time,
for them.
right? Like, especially as a mom with kids, you're like, I need someone that's going to fill my bucket because I can't give to my kids and my spouse and friendships when nobody else is giving that back.
Yeah.
You basically said the exact same things that I had said and said, that's exactly what I want. You know, my other thing was like, I just want someone that will love my kids like they love their own and is willing to accept all of us kind of as a package deal. Because in motherhood, that's what happens.
It totally
Your friends come with their children.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so different about friendship and motherhood. And at least for me, especially at that point in time, I still had some really good friends, but they either weren't even married yet or didn't have kids yet. And it just, I mean, I'm still friends with these people, but it just is such a different dynamic when you're not in the same stage of life.
For sure.
It's like dating after you're married and you're trying to date couples. Mm-hmm. It's not just you that's part of the equation.
Right.
It's everybody. And I mean, I'm super grateful that we do stuff not just with our kids, but
Most of the time it is.
most of the time it is.
And we have to mesh. That has to, right? Our kids have to kind of get along. And we have to be able to understand that, like, for both of us, motherhood comes before our friendship. And so having someone that sees that, right? But also is almost like a partner in friendship with your kids.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
I don't know how else to describe it. It's like a marriage outside of a marriage.
Totally
Do you know what I mean?
I think my husband would agree. Like, you were definitely my sister wife.
Right. Because outside of the home, like when we go places and I'm with you and my kids, I need that help and support. And you do too, you know?
Yeah.
And so if we don't all mesh, it doesn't work. So, you know, I think it started our friendship off right. And I've come back to that too, evaluating that. But the best part about it is we have both gone through seasons where we have to give more than we take, or when we have to take more than we give.
Yeah.
But the beautiful part about finding a friendship that we have built and put work into, right?
Oh,
It didn't
for sure.
a lot of it came naturally.
Yeah.
But
we're definitely very compatible.
for sure. And we're really lucky that way. But I think the biggest difference is that we both were willing to put in the work, right? And there's times where, I mean, look at being pregnant, for example, right? There was times where you were like, I have nothing to give. Yeah. And I was in a season of life where I could give a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then there's times where I needed more and you had more to give. And we're usually flip-flopped.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it's really nice when we're both have a lot to give.
Yeah.
Things seem a little bit easier. You know,
but I feel like even in some of the times where we both have been at very
Low of
little,
low.
yeah, very little to give, we also were doing that together.
Yeah, we hold space for each other.
Yeah.
In the hard.
And I feel like even just that was enough.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of things, like as much as we love our spouse will never understand what it's like to be a mom.
No.
Right? And I feel like the only person in the world that can do that is another mom.
Yeah, for sure.
And so having a mom that sees things like you do and is just willing to sit there, because sometimes I just need you to listen while I rant.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it's a sounding board. Most of the time it's a sounding board.
Most of the time.
Right?
Well, and a lot of the time it's both. We start with just, oh my goodness, this happened and this happened and this happened.
Yeah.
You just have to get it out, and then we can kind of build each other back up from there. And okay, what do you need right now? And maybe here's a different way to look at things. And we totally build each other back up after that. And it has been both.
I'm in a stage of life where, like, I don't need friends per se, right? Like, I'm so stinking busy as it is with 3 kids and running a house and a marriage and all the things that, like, I don't, quote unquote, need friends. But a part of the story that I missed at the very beginning was, like, when you very first messaged me, we were like, can we be friends?
I totally did.
Right? Like,
because
that was your exact wording.
Wanted a friend so bad.
Right.
And because I was at that point where I didn't really, we had just moved and it was like barely post-COVID and I didn't really know anybody that was in the same stage of life around me and had kids my same kids' ages. And
I mean, and how often do we, like, see moms on Instagram and you're like, oh, I wish we could be friends.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
totally.
And you're like, oh my gosh,
but
it
feels so scary.
Me.
And I feel like starting with you were kind of like my first jump into
the guinea pig.
Yes. And with women in my neighborhood, as I've kind of gotten to know them a little bit, I've kind of had the same feeling of, I just want to be friends with them. And so like last summer, I invited a girl in my neighborhood, like just a couple doors up from me, that has kids all about the same ages as me. And she is 3 as well. And I was like, do you want to just come to the pool with me? And she was like, oh my goodness, yes. And she told me then, she was like, I wanted to be friends with you. And I was like, I just want to be friends with you. But I didn't go outside my comfort zone for so long. And then I started inviting other women in my neighborhood to all get together once a month. And all of them have expressed like, oh, I wanted to do this, but I didn't know how to ask. And I was so scared to send that first text.
Well, and I think it literally takes the 5, right? We talked about the 10 seconds of courage or the 5 seconds of courage or whatever it is. And like that changes everything. Because worst case scenario, your situation stays the same. Yeah. Right? That's your worst case scenario.
But likely...
best case scenario, look at us 3 years later. Yeah. You know what I mean? Sure.
But likely everyone's feeling the same way. Like you were thinking the same thing. But
totally. But I wasn't going to say it.
I think that was like a little nudge of, you just need to do this. Because I kept thinking about it for a long time before I finally was like, can we be friends?
Well, and that's what, when you talk so much about, on your platform about finding your village, I think a lot of time as women, most of us sit there and go, well, where's my village?
But we're not
realizing we have to create our village. Yeah. And every woman has to do that. It doesn't just show up at your door. I wish it did. I wish it were really that easy. But to create our village, it takes some uncomfortable moments.
Yeah, for sure.
Of being totally vulnerable.
Well, and uncomfortable moments too as you're building a friendship, because you don't just go from, hi, let's be friends, to
the greatest friends that you feel like you could like turn your whole life over to.
And be super vulnerable with and all the things.
You and I have grown so much in our motherhood journey together, right? Yeah. I mean, I'd been a mom for 2 years when I first met you. I mean, it's only been 5. It's not like I'm, a pro in motherhood either.
It's pretty significant.
But I went from having a toddler to now, like, a really young toddler to like a child. Yeah. I actually have a child who talks and learns and, all the things. But there's so much we've grown in our motherhood. And what's interesting is like at first I was like, as we make decisions, are those going to look the same? Are we going to have the same opinions about things? And are we going to go about things? But it's been so fun because as we've both explored things together in motherhood and talked things through, we ended up somehow on quite literally the same path. We think about so much in such a similar way. And I think it's because we have that vulnerability. We talk so much about everything. The options of everything. Yeah. And
fill in a lot of gaps for each other of, okay, I know a little bit more about this, or I have resources, I know where to go for this, and you have other resources in other areas, and so we've been able to talk through things, and I think that's one thing I really love about our friendship is it's not just surface level. It's become very much, oh my goodness, I read this book, I learned about this, and I want to tell you all about it, and let me send you a 20-minute Marco on one subject.
Which we do often.
Or
I just turn it on as I'm walking around cleaning my house just to tell you about my life in that day, But I think that's the beautiful thing about our friendship is that vulnerability started off so early. But again, I think as a woman, as a mother in particular, like, it's going to be uncomfortable for a minute.
Yeah.
But that's how you build your village. And we've had times where we're like, okay, well, let's invite someone else into our village too. Like the girls' weekend that we just had, they were people that like you and I were firm, and like slowly but surely we started to add people that meshed with us, that kind of thought like us. And that's how I feel like we build our village. But again, it takes some serious guts.
And it takes time.
We're going on 3 years now. We're just
starting to really build the people around us. And part of that is just, we've had a lot of life going on. Sure. And so we started where we could, and it was just the 2 of us. And as we've kind of started to get to a point where we feel like we can take on more, we add that. And that's been such an amazing part too, of being able to add people to that, let other people experience that vulnerability and connection that is sometimes really hard to come by.
Yeah, totally.
If you were starting over, what would you do? If we hadn't ever met, what would you do to start building your village if you have kind of the knowledge that you know now of
what it took?
Yeah, of what it took.
Honestly, I think the first thing is you have to start where you are, right?
Yeah.
So when we moved to Arizona for Riley's internship, right, we walked in knowing nobody. We knew we were there for 3 months, which isn't permanent, but like I didn't want to spend 3 months by myself. My husband worked 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, you know?
It's a long time to be
and so
mom and all the things.
Right. And fortunately for me at the time, like our church group, our religious group, I started there because that was like immediate connection. I knew I had at least one thing in common with these people. Mm-hmm. And it was super uncomfortable. I remember walking into Relief Society, which is just like a group of women at church, and we sit together and learn together, specifically a lot of topics about motherhood, womanhood, all the things, right? I walked in and just like saw some random girl and I was like, can I sit by you? Like, just, you know, because what else was I going to do?
Yeah.
And just asked like, you know, what's your name and how many kids do you have and all, you know, just the surface level questions.
Which, okay, I think that's actually one of the really nice things about motherhood. If you go to a park or if at church or whatever, and you can start with your kids become kind of your buffer.
Right, totally.
Like a really easy topic of conversation where you can sit and just...
Well, it's an immediate connection too, right?
Totally.
Like even if you have nothing in common, you can talk about your kids.
Yeah, you can totally just sit and talk about your kids, and that can be the start.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened. And then it was like, okay, well, we take our kids to the park. We go to the park on Tuesday at 4:00 and late, you know, if you guys want to come. And then it all of a sudden became the ball was in my court. And I had to make the decision to actually go hang out with these people that I didn't know. Do you know what I mean?
And you know it's going to be uncomfortable.
Oh, 100%. Right? The first few times are probably a little uncomfortable. Yeah. You're still trying to remember people's names and get to know them. And then... You know, and then it eventually turned into like a girls' night. Like, hey, a bunch of us are getting together for a girls' night. Do you want to come? And then it was like me without my kids. And then I had no buffer. Do you know what I mean? I had to sit and have actual conversation with these people. But again, if I had to start over, I think it would just be that. Just start where you are and be willing to be uncomfortable, knowing the end result. I mean, it's like pregnancy, right? Like you and I, we get pregnant knowing we're going to suffer for 9 months. Like, but we know the end result will end in a beautiful baby. Yeah. Right? And friendships are the same way. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable to make that decision because we know in the end, hopefully, the end result will bring friendships or lessons, which are both beautiful. Yeah. And helpful and will serve us. And some friendships serve us for a time and a season. Mm-hmm. And then we move on. And we find our village for that time and season. Right? My high school friends are great. I have nothing wrong with my high school friends. Thank heavens a lot of them are in the same life situation I am. But for a while, I was the only one. For 3.5 years, I was the only one with kids. Yeah. You know, and that's so a long time. It was hard to keep those connections going. Mm-hmm. Now they have kids, and so it's a little bit easier. But like some of our friendships are for a time and a season, and some are for the rest of our life. Sorry, but you're hitched to me for the rest of your life. Okay?
Good, I'm glad.
You know, but again, I think it's just willing, just like you were, just willing to be uncomfortable for a minute, knowing that it might not go anywhere, but it also could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Yeah. Which I feel lucky that that's exactly what it was. My mom talks about how when they moved into the first house that my parents bought, and it was all a new development, so everybody was new. Like there was no establishment at all. So everyone was kind of just trying to figure it out. Yeah. Right. Which is nice in some ways because then you don't feel like you're joining this already established group. Mm-hmm. But also there wasn't an established group, and so everyone was scared and in their own heads the whole time. And she talks about how for a long time she was like, why is no one inviting me over? No one likes me. And finally was just like, I'm going to start inviting. And if you know my mom at all, you would never know that that's how she felt because she is the hostess. Mm-hmm. She always has people over. Is always inviting somebody new. Is always throwing some party. Always has some kind of gathering. Is always pulling in extra people and just loving them. And it really stemmed because of being a young mom and being lonely and not being invited. And so why not be the one to start inviting? Right. And it was so uncomfortable, and it's so crazy. Like now you would never know that that's how she was because it is Well, she built
so
a
much
village.
of her personality, though,
Yeah.
is become such an easy, natural thing for her to do that, because she started once those first women she invited, they have annual things that they do now, even like almost 30 years later.
Mm-hmm. And she built her own village.
Yeah, she did.
You know, that trend on Instagram, do you remember when that trend was going on about, they say it takes a village, where do I get that village, you know?
Yeah.
Do you remember that trend?
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly that. Like, you get it because you make it.
Yeah. Which is so hard.
It doesn't just show up. It really doesn't. Like, that's a rude reality, but, you know, it doesn't just show up at your front door.
Yeah.
You know, some of us, I think, will get lucky, right? There's people that we meet in life just, like, on our path that are magic and they stick, and friendships are immediate, and that's great, you know? But that's, like, once in a blue moon.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to build our village. And once you start, it does become easier. Like you had mentioned, like, we were kind of the practice ground, and then you've been able to expand from that. But it just takes one person. If you can find one, I feel like it becomes easier to find more.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially because, I mean, we've all seen friendships where we're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could be in that group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's way more intimidating to go to a group of people and be like, can I hang out with all of you? Than just going to one single person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, look how fast your village could grow if you did that. You know? Like, if someone came to us and was like, can I hang out with you? Like, we wouldn't be like, no, we're good. We're closed off, you know?
Yeah. We'd, like, immediately invite them and be like, please be friends with us. I would love that.
Because there is nothing better, again, in motherhood. The only people that ever understand how we truly feel are other moms.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about that and to fall into, like, that pattern of talking about motherhood, because that's just that's who we are. That's the stage of life we're in. Like, eventually our kids will grow up and they will leave the house. And then I'm sure friendships will look very different.
Yeah.
But building your village just where you are, you know, starting small.
But I also think you opened the door. I wanted to reach out to you multiple times because I knew that you were back at your parents' house and I was at my parents' house, and so we were super close. But you just putting out on Instagram, like, oh, I'm thinking of starting a play group, felt like a cracked open door for me to open it a little wider and say yes.
Yeah.
And then to extend another invitation. And so maybe start there of, hey, does anyone want to, you know, we're heading to the park on this day.
Yes.
And just put it out there. And I think there's actually, so I found out that in our area, there's all these, like, massive mom groups, like 30 to 70 people.
And I didn't realize how long they'd been going on today. So
Yes,
I was like,
like years.
We've been in mom group for 8 years.
Yes.
Like, whoa. Okay.
So just, I mean, really put it out on social media of, like, does anyone know of any local mom groups? Or, like, one of my friends met one of the groups because she happened to be at the same park that they were at that day and started talking to somebody. And then became part of that group, and, like, that's how she found them.
Yeah.
So there are things like that in a lot of areas. So just put it out on Instagram, because chances are somebody you know is like, oh, I'm part of this. Like,
And I used to
come join us, but you don't know until...
It requires effort.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you don't know what's even out there until you just ask. Mm-hmm. Where you might know somebody that's in a group that is super open and inviting, but they don't know that you're looking for that either. Right. Sometimes it's hard to know who to invite.
You know, just like you were saying, I've had friends that will post like, hey, we're going to Thanksgiving Point, which is a local children's museum by where we live. We're going to Thanksgiving Point. Does anybody want to come on Tuesday? And, like, there's times where I've been like, sure. And sometimes those friendships stick and sometimes they don't, but it started somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? And she was willing to say, hey, does anybody want to come? Like, that's easy. You don't have to specifically talk to, like, one single person. Be like, will you come with us? But you just open invitation.
Yeah.
And it's an easy way to build connections without pressure.
Yeah. If you have a neighborhood mom chat, put it out on that. Start there if putting it out on social media feels a little bit too much. Like, oh, we're headed to this park at 10 tomorrow morning if you want to come. And I've developed a lot of friendships that way, like in my neighborhood, as people have been, oh, I'm going on a walk at this time. And I started joining them, and that's been really fun. And it's evolved from there into more than that. And
because it is, friendships and motherhood are so daunting. Also because sometimes I feel like we get together as women and we're like, if I feed my kid the wrong thing, is someone going to judge me? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I gave my kid an artificial flavored fruit snack. Like, is someone going to say something? And I feel like we're so hard on ourselves when we get with other moms of like, are they going to judge me? we're all just doing the best darn thing that we can.
Yeah.
None of us know what's happening.
The knowledge we have with the bandwidth that we have in this season.
Sure. And so sometimes it seems intimidating. Like, well, I don't know if I'm going to fit in with them.
And if you don't, then
that's fine.
Okay.
But you won't know unless you
just keep trying. Yeah. I mean, I went on a walk with another mom group, and they were really fun, but they weren't my people. And I was just like, thanks for inviting me. Like, that was really fun. And I didn't go again, and that's okay.
Because at least it gave you something to do. Yeah. You know, you got out of the house for a minute to go on your walk. But, you know, I think we just keep coming back to the same principle of, if we all just have a little bit of courage, I think we can take the loneliness out of motherhood. Like, it's been so interesting. The last 2 years is really when our friendship has, like, really dug deep. And in particular, I think even the last year, really, we've dug, because we've gone through some really hard things together the last year. But I very rarely feel lonely in motherhood anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's like, as soon as I start to feel that way, I jump on Marco Polo. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Our
friendship was built on Marco Polo. We're business partners too, and our business is built on Marco Polo.
It still runs on Marco Polo.
We spent a lot of time on Marco. So,
which, if you don't use Marco Polo, sponsor us, Marco Polo, but you know, because we live on it, I feel like. And even our other friends, because sometimes that's the only way we can connect.
Mm-hmm. Like, some of our closest friends, one of our friends is in Vernal, which is like three and a half hours away from us right now. And our other really close friend, she's moved a bunch. She moves to Arkansas like
tomorrow.
This week. Yeah. So,
but it's nice to just be like,
but
we can know we're far, but we're close. You know, for a minute.
And they're like two of our closest friends.
Yeah. And so it's nice to check in that way. But, you know, I don't feel lonely anymore. Yeah. Even though it's just one friendship. But that's enough. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's hard, but it pays off so fast.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I could have the friendship I have with you with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I want our village to be big, but those friendships where you are giving and taking a lot, I feel like you can only have so many of those before you don't have enough to give.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But
well, it only takes one. I mean, today we went to,
it only takes one.
We went to mom club together, and I met, you know, I've only been a couple of times, so it was nice to meet some of the other moms, though. Just immediately in my village just got a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And even, they don't all serve the same purpose. Mm-hmm. Right? Sometimes, some are just temporary, some are more just fun, some are there maybe for conversation, or some I may get to know better, but they all serve a different purpose.
Yeah.
You know? And so ours serves, in this stage of life, like, the deepest purpose, and that's what works for us. Right? But, like, motherhood is not supposed to be lonely. It's really not.
It's not.
Right? It's meant to be shared because we're all on the same journey. We're on a different spot in the path, and it might look different, but our journey ultimately is the same. The destination is the same. We want to be the best women that we can, to be the best moms we can, to raise these beautiful humans, to do good things in the world.
Yeah.
And
there's a million ways to get there.
There's a million ways to skin a cat, right?
Yep.
And so we just get to use each other as tools towards that ultimate goal of, like, raising our humans, raising our tiny people.
If we're all heading in the same direction, like let's go together.
Yep, exactly. You know, and it's helpful that, like, our kids are best friends, and so it makes it easier too, which I feel like, but, like, our friendship fostered that too, right?
Oh, for sure.
And I think it's awesome for our kids to see what our friendship looks like, because I want them to expect that out of their friendships too.
And I love that my kids have a relationship with you, and your kids have a relationship with me, where they're always jumping on and, oh, I want to tell Sam this, or, oh, I want to tell Missy this.
Which is the dream, right?
It's like when Adam walked into your house the other day when I was there, he was like, oh, hey, miss.
Yeah.
Like, that made my whole day.
It just is like, you're just a part of their life.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that was one of the original questions that you asked. And that's one of the ways that I answered was, I want someone that loves my kids. Mm-hmm. Right? I want my kids to see that and what that looks like, because our friendship is so rooted in motherhood. That was important to me, that they felt that
absolutely
too. And it helps that they're quite literally all the same age.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that made it easier, but I would take your kids in a heartbeat, which there's times that I have, and you've done the same for me in a pickle, and you love them like I love them, you know?
Yeah.
Which I'm super grateful for.
Me too.
Makes life easier.
So much easier. All right. Last thing. We do our magic in the mundane moments. So what was your magic in the mundane in the last week or so?
Oh my goodness. My 5-year-old is very into like mommy daddy time right now. He'll ask for the baby. Can we have mommy, daddy, and Hudson time? What he's telling me is, please leave the 3-year-old at home. Or I want time without her.
Yeah.
Because they're hooked at the hip most of the day. They're together all of the time. And just with life situations, like I haven't been able to give him as much time lately as I really would like to. But the other day just felt like he really needed some one-on-one time. And so I put my 3-year-old down for a nap and asked him if he wanted to play a game. And we played 3 rounds of Catan Jr. And you would have thought he had won the lottery. It's so funny how their attitude changes so fast when they get what they're looking for. Which he was telling me, I need some one-on-one attention. Right, but that was so fun to play board games with my 5-year-old. And he was so happy and it was so much fun.
It's so funny watching them become real little humans that can hold a conversation and
like think
you can play with on their level, but on your level, right? Where it fills your tank just as much as it fills theirs.
So that was, so simple, but something he still remembers, he still talks about, and something it will be a long time till I forget for sure.
Yeah, that's so cute.
What about you?
Oh my goodness. For me, I feel like mine has just been watching my kids play. It's so funny for me to watch the boys interact with their baby sister and watch her face as they come in the room and go straight for her because they just want to play with her all day long. It's just so funny. I just love watching them. You know those moments that are so surreal and you're like, how is this my life right now? Like
every day. I ask myself that every day.
This is all I've wanted and I have it, and look at these little humans that I made that love each other and want to be together. And I feel like we're kind of in a mostly happy stage right now where they're all getting along really well. And it's just so...
That's the best.
Just so fun. It's just so fun. I love that they're all little buddies and want to be around each other most of the time.
So fun. Makes it magical. Those are the payday moments as a mom.
Oh, definitely. When you're like, okay, they are getting it.
Maybe I'm not doing it all wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Good thing we have those. Just often enough to keep us happy, but not often enough that we get too.
Yeah. Complacent.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have Sam back again later for more
can't wait.
Mom chats.
Well, this is the best part is we chat anyway all the time. So now we just get to do it in a microphone.
Oh yeah, it really just felt like hanging out. Thanks so much for joining us this episode. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, so message me on Instagram at @themissy_allred. There is always room in our village, so if you enjoyed it, will you please send it to a friend or leave a rating and review? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for being here. I'll talk to you next week.